Hey guys, thank you so much for coming on here. When we had our Belfair meetup, I promised that I would show you how I go about editing consistently through the different kind of styles and light that we have. So here I've selected these 5 images. This was a specific moment where we had talked about how do I make these photos look cohesive, even though I'm going from like a micro to macro sort of scene, and we have it here. I think the first thing to note, especially with the type of light that we're working with, is how underexposed everything is. This is all very raw. There's nothing, there's nothing done on these at all. And I underexposed them all because the way that the light was setting in the background, it's going to be a soft backlit type of light. And so if I hadn't underexposed, and I probably could have even underexposed more, because you can still see around the sun is overexposed. It's washed out right there. Now that's not a huge deal because I like the soft backlight, and so I can just use that as a soft warm kind of look and feel when I'm done. So I'm going to go to my usual preset and I'm going to edit from there. That'll do just some of the basics that I already know that I like and want to apply every time I edit a photo. I strongly encourage you to do this if you haven't already. I do have some presets I'm working on sharing with you guys soon. And then the next thing is just going to be those color tones and white balance. This is a great tool here to try, and you can just kind of select wherever it will let you and it will compensate. Sometimes it's on target, sometimes it's not. This is way too pink for me. I don't like it, so I'm going to go ahead and bring this down. So I don't really love this photo overall. I think it's a little bit weird. There's a lot with the trees happening, and this creates that deep shade. There's a lot of texture, and then the light is a little uneven as far as the way the foreground is lit, and that's just going to happen because of how low the sun was. Otherwise, it would all be very dark, in which case I could edit it this way and just edit for the sky. Kind of see how that might turn out. And that's kind of how I start with creating consistent editing. Is I'm going to pick that first photo, get the look I want, and then I'll copy and paste my edits and go from there. So what I'm doing here in the tone curve is just softening the darks because it's already going to have a lot of contrast, a lot of kind of just intense dark, and that's something that I'm not attracted to that as much in my own photos, especially when the light is direct and so low in the horizon. Now, if I had shifted to the right or left and I got more direct lines and shadows from the light, then I would probably like it a lot more, but in this particular case I don't. So I'm just going to keep working through and see what I can do to adjust it. Let's bring back some of the oranges and yellows here, maybe increase some of the blues. And then because there's some chromatic aberration up here in the trees, we will go to the lens corrections and defringe some of that. It's more purple, I think. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so I'd say this would be great for a series. It's not a perfect final edit, but what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to hit Command C on my keyboard, copy, and then Command V. Now obviously that isn't the exact same edit, is not going to work for this particular photo, but what I'm going to do is then go through and just adjust it with just the similar kind of idea in mind, right? I don't like the darks to be, or the shadows to be too dark and the blacks to overtake and distract, and I want to have just some really nice tones and color and balance throughout the whole image. Sometimes if it's just not working, if I just can't bring it back, I'll go back to my preset and try, and so that's what the preset would start with versus where I had edited. So look at this one here, that's where I started, that's where I ended, and then this was the full before and after. So you can see that even a preset is obviously not perfect. It's not necessarily one and done, but it's a starting point, and it especially gets you through those first few just tools and tasks that you adjust every time. And if you look through and you start consistently paying attention to what you're adjusting, it's likely that you have the same, at least some things that you do will be the same. So this, I think what I'm struggling with in these particular photos is how kind of blown out the sky feels. I would have almost underexposed it even more. You can kind of see there's not a lot of detail back there, and it's a pretty bright sky. But that's okay, it's still interesting story. There we go, kind of soften those highlights a little bit. For the most part, that mood, I think that feels pretty accurate to the scene. So let's Command C, Command V. Again, not going to work now. The light's changed, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust it, right? You have to compensate for how the light is going to affect your image differently as you kind of shift around and move. Go back to desaturating a little bit, and that to me looks a lot nicer. I'm going to check with the vignetting a little, kind of lighten that up. And that still feels like it has a good mood, but there's nothing distracting. It's still soft, and that's kind of the key, is you want the same type of light tones going from one image to the next. So, you know, there's nothing harsh about, and I mean, it's dark, it's moody, but it was low light, so that's what does make this trickier, a little bit trickier. And just know they're not going to be the same, but I also know that I'm looking for the same things each time I'm adjusting the photo. Drop the shadows down a bit. Okay. Next one, Command V. Oh, let's copy these edits, paste them over, and there we go. That one is very nearly done. I'd actually be happy just leaving this, but I can pull up the shadows a tiny bit here and maybe boost the yellows just to make the flowers pop. It gives the subject a little more clarity. Bring up the purples because these flowers are a little purple, so I want to add some color back into that. Soft light tends to be a little less saturated than harsh light, so if there's a color you specifically want to pull out, then you kind of have to go through that process. It's not always the case, but in this case there are flowers, so that just works. Okay, I'm totally happy with this one. And so then this last photo is going to be water and sky. So I'm going to go back to this image. I'm going to copy this edit and paste it on this photo. Now it doesn't work, so let's boost that exposure a little bit, and it all goes down, goes back to the look you want. So just a quick note here, so I tend to pull up the shadows a lot to give a bit of a balance between the lights and the darks and to reduce the contrast a little, especially when it's an image like this. It already has so much contrast. But when you're dealing with such low light like we are in this particular image, if you go down here, there's going to be a lot of color, noise, and grain in here. For the most part, that's okay. I don't mind it at all. Here's that chromatic aberration that you can go down and into lens corrections, manual, defringe, and try to reduce that a little bit. It's just a technical flaw. It's not a big deal. If you don't even have to do it if you don't want to. But because I know that there's that color noise down here, it's going to bother me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reduce the shadows back to a healthier level so that I'm not looking at a lot of color noise. And then if I still want those blacks to be reduced to where they're just not feeling so intense, and this is something I actually have to step away from and come back to often, because I tend to want to soften things too much, and then I come back and look at them later, or if I share them on other platforms, I'm like, gosh, why does it look so almost kind of flat and there's not enough contrast in it? And that's because as I sit here editing, I start kind of losing that eye for where the contrast works and when it gets too soft. So I have to be intentional about not overdoing it. So I'm going to pull up the blacks using the tone curve though, just because this is an area I know where I can soften it and not overdo it too much, and then that already feels more pleasing to me. I think I want to adjust colors a bit more though. And so the thing is I just had the thought that I could go in the tone curve and I could add some really fun sunsetty vibes, more intense to this, more colors, because there's a lot of good light and color in here that I could really enjoy playing with and giving this a really pretty sunset look if I wanted to. However, for the sake of having that consistent tone throughout, that would not be a wise choice. So I'm going to pass on that. I'm just going to bring up the pinks, not too much, and then go hit G on my keyboard and look at it a little more consistently. And here you can see now that I think these photos go together really nicely. They'll have similar contrast. You can see the sunset goes from the more blues to orange to a little bit. That pink added a nice softer tone to indicate that now we're at sunset. The sun is now behind the horizon, so or below the horizon. So I would love to hear what you guys think. Do you feel like these images have that consistency and that nice kind of flow of cohesiveness? I personally think that they do. I think this makes a great little mini series of these 5 photos, and it's really simple. And I know that it doesn't help when you see photographers in videos like editing with their presets, but I will say that when I go in to edit a photo from completely raw with none of my presets added, it takes so much more work, right? Like if I'm going through every single time and adjusting every single thing that I'm doing every time, and I'm making all the color adjustments and messing with the saturation and the vibrance and then the color calibration, and those are all things I do almost every time. And if I go through and have to do that individually, it's just kind of too much of a headache. It would take me so much longer to edit and do these videos. So don't be discouraged when you see that, and that's why I do encourage you so much to make your own presets, and that's simply based on just the things you love to do. So to quickly end this video with that, let's reset this image, and I will walk you through a quick preset making tutorial. You can hit auto if you need a place to start. If you don't love it, then undo it, and you can just start with, here in the basic panel here, let's bump up the exposure, and that's probably something I would do. I underexpose often, right? So I know I'm always going to bump the exposure a little bit. I'm going to increase the clarity. I will desaturate a little. I'm always going to push my greens down a little bit. In this case, I can drop yellows a little because I know I can always bring that back up. I'm going to adjust my split toning here. And this is just, it's very generic, but it also, if there's something you do in similar types of scenes and similar types of light, this week we're talking about soft and harsh light in our class. So you'll see where I will have presets for when I'm in harsh light and I'm in soft light and I'm in more green tone woodlands versus bright sun daylight where there's not a lot of green, for portraits versus not for portraits, and then just like different things like that. And you can save a preset for every scenario that you shoot in, and that offers you that consistency that you really can't get anywhere else. And it helps you be consistent when you're not trying to do these basic things every single time. If I edited these with no preset and not even copying and pasting every time, that would just be such a nightmare, and it would take so long. So okay, so this I'm totally happy with. I don't even need to adjust anything else. And this is just basic editing, right? So then I'm going to go over here to presets on the left side, hit the plus sign, create a preset, and then this would just be like basic edit, and then put it in whatever group you desire, and create. Simple as that. And now every time you go to edit your photos, where did that one? Here we go. Then I can hit, let's reset, basic edit, and it's done for me. I don't have to go through that every single time. So again, I really strongly encourage you to give it a try. I would for sure label them in a way that makes the most sense to you, so that when you're editing, like these 3, these are my, what I call my autumn presets, and I use them because I love those autumnal tones no matter what. So I'll use these every time, and you can almost see how similar that is to the basic preset we just did. And I use that every time, very consistently throughout my images, so that I have that consistency, it's cohesive, it's pretty, and then from there, it's like, okay, everything I already want done is done. Now I can fine tune it to this specific image. And say I want this yellow to be really intense and just really bright. Then all I have to do is adjust the yellow in the HSL color panel, and I'm done. I don't have to spend 2 hours working on this one photo to get every step down that I want. So I hope that you guys found this helpful. I hope that you see how easy it is to make your photos cohesive. A lot of just Command C and Command V to get the the same edits from one photo to the next, you can batch edit by hitting Command A, and then you can go through into develop settings and paste settings or paste settings from previous, and that will just apply the same edit to all of them. I don't tend to do that because it does change as you go. So it's not going to always be the same, but if that's easier for you to start with every photo just edited the same and then you make adjustments for individual images, and that can be easier too. So okay, so I hope you found this helpful. Let me know what your thoughts are, what you think about this, if you found it helpful, and if you do make your own presets, I would love to hear how that's working for you. And I have one so far available in my shop, and if there will be more coming soon. So yeah, I look forward to hearing from you. Have a nice day.